Hello, gamers, and welcome to the GAU Gamer Summit. I am Drew D3 Frere, joined here by three very professional men within the gaming industry, and we are going to solve the biggest problems with today's gaming industry. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
I am Eric Rickety Beans Rubino, the senior editor at GamersRUs.com.
I am Andy, Game Diplomacy Lanique, event planner for GamersRUs.com.
And I'm Oz, Sanguinary Oz Krajewski.
And I am just some drunk guy who stumbled in off the street.
No, you already went first.
I didn't give any credentials,
And now you know he's drunk.
I had to give my credentials. So today I want to talk about basically achievement creep. Over time, games have gotten from extremely, extremely difficult challenges that would prove a man's mettle and make him the envy of all of his friends and all the ladies at the bar to things that you solve by default, games that you have to get through. If you sit there with enough monkeys on the controller for long enough, you have to win. I mean, I think we should start out by saying each of our gaming achievements that we are most proud of. For me, I'd say it would have to be defeating the Gaping Dragon in Dark Souls. Ooh. It took me like 3 weeks. I read every strategy guide. I just couldn't get it, and then I finally made it. After making 3 different characters with 3 different strategies to get through the game, I made a mage, and I was able to beat it.
Not bad. Kudos, like seriously.
Yep, that's a modern game that has preserved the difficulty for me.
Definitely.
I think we touched on it a little bit last week, sort of by accident. I got the perfect ending to Mass Effect 2, and genuinely, I mean this sincerely, by accident. Like I was like, oh, like I didn't understand like the mission structure because 2 was different from 1, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna do this, and I was like, oh, this person, oh, they have side quests, more games, sure. Oh, this person, yeah, I like them too. And then at the end, we have to pick them all for the different missions. I again used logic, and they were like, oh, you need a biotic for this, and I was like, okay, who's the best biotic? You're doing that. You need a leader for this other team. I'm like, okay, well, Jacob wants to do it, but he's a clown, so I'm gonna have to. Like, it made sense. I picked all the right people, and then at the end, I was like, oh, sweet. And I talked to a friend of mine. He's like, dude, nobody died. And I was like, no, were they supposed to? He's
oh
like,
my god.
Oh, I lost half my party. I was like, oh wow, okay. I was pretty psyched about that by accident. So.
You're not on my team.
All right, Andy, how are you going to top that?
I have to ask, does it have to be actual achievements in this generation, 360 and PS3, or does it have to be like
something
personalized?
It could be like hang gliding if you wanted.
High score in Tetris, dude.
Hang gliding 64. Okay, my number 1 game achievement. Okay, so as a Devil May Cry effing fanatic.
Oh no.
Yeah. Absolute, complete, maxed out Devil May Cry 3 Dante Must Die Special Edition. I'm talking about, when I say max out, can't get any more orbs, can't get any more life, no more Devil Trigger mode, Dante Must Die mode completed, Virgil completed without being touched. Like every single possible way of beating that game. I think the amount of times I finished it through before I even try to actually go for it was 37 times. I've watched the cutscenes over and over and over again to the point where I can memorize it. That is my finest, over the top, I can't believe you're still playing this game achievement.
So why did you introduce yourselves as like our editor when instead you've made this amazing contribution to society? You should have been like Andy Lanique, Devil May Cry expert.
I'm honestly naming my first son Dante. I'm not joking with you. I'm just saying I'm a Devil May Cry fanatic, and yeah, that was mine. I'm still proud of that.
All right, Eric. Wow. Well, now you're going to look stupid.
Yeah, mine looks bad because I'm sure a lot of people have done it. But when I was not of age even to have San Andreas, it was purchased for me by my mother foolishly, and I beat it 100% pretty much in the summer that it came out. And at that time, that was the most time that I've ever spent playing any video game in my life, and I just didn't stop. And the worst part is that I kept playing it after that and just playing it after that for probably the next 2 years. While I just had it 100% completed, I would just go do whatever because I had so much ammo and so much everything and so much money. It didn't
matter. He had a small one-man cartel.
Essentially.
Empire.
It's just one of my favorite games of all time, and it's the only game that I actually have 100%ed to that fullest degree.
The
But
full 100%.
too bad there's no platinum trophy for that yet.
Now, it's really interesting. I'm really glad I asked this question because we went around the scope from Andy and I were kind of talking about something that was really technically difficult to do, mechanically really difficult. You had luck of the draw, using common sense to
He
get
is
one of
Commander
the most
Shepard.
difficult. And Eric had sheer force of will and love for his title that just. Oh, yours also had some of that too.
Yeah.
Yours was definitely the most impressive, I think, and you had the technical achievement and the passion achievement there.
For the record, for those of you who don't know what Dante Must Die mode is, and you guys should explain some of your games too, by the way, because not everyone has played all your games.
Well, now they have a couple more games to go. And pick
Yeah,
up, so they-
Dante Must Die mode is essentially everyone is basically can kill you with one hit, but not everybody. Everyone has a full life bar, so you literally have to go through every single level without getting hit once. At all.
Now, they just made us look even stupider. Now, that brings us great to my next point, which is, as games come up, do you think that more difficult games are inherently better for gamers to play? Do they make for a better experience? It seems like all these difficult games that come out, Devil May Cry has a huge following, Dark Souls has a huge following. It seems like the really difficult games become the most lauded, and the easy ones kind of get cast to the side. Do you see this as a trend in the industry?
I don't know. I think I would probably disagree with that. And the only reason I say that is you're absolutely right. They have a dedicated fan base for sure, and I think that's very common. But games if you're talking about difficult games versus popular games, okay, look at Madden and Call of Duty. Neither of those games is difficult.
No matter
Just
what
like
mode
a
you
Call
play
of
on.
Duty.
They're the by a massive margin. They're the most popular games on console. They just are, and they're not difficult. I'm not saying you can jump into Call of Duty multiplayer and just wipe the floor with everybody. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you were to just play the campaign or even play multiplayer, you don't have to be good at that game to enjoy it. I'm sure it helps, or if that's what you're into. But if you're the guy who's what's my kill to death ratio? I'm like, yeah, settle down. But people laud that number, oh, look at my kill to death ratio. I'm like, that's great. What else can you do? Madden's the same way. Not a particularly difficult game, and yet it sells like crazy every year. I don't know why, but those are the two most popular games in terms of numbers sold, and they're not. I wouldn't say they're difficult at all.
And yet both of them have such a competitive following. It's always us against them, and the skill ceilings are so incredibly high. You can see upper level tournaments in Madden and Call of Duty where people just have insane twitch, insane reflexes. They've memorized the coding for all this. If they see the players scatter a certain way, they know exactly what the computer's going to do or what the other PC controlled players are going to do.
Thank God for
It's
Titanfall.
insane. It seems like gamers are just inherently attracted towards this challenge at the ultimate level.
So completionists, or
But Eric
challenge?
is
I
a
don't
different
know.
kind of guy here because
Yeah.
I don't know.
he went through college.
When you talked about completionists last time, you said what? It's 5%.
It's
right.
it's around 50% of people, but in the most extreme terms, it's 1/3 of gamers actually will beat a game if you were talking broadly. But I don't know. I'm not a completionist by all means. I really like to have fun in a game and get the next one. I'm always on to the next one, even if I really loved it. I'm on to the next one. But I don't know. There's something fulfilling about beating a game 100%, but I think it's something that really comes with how many games you play a year. When it comes down to a lot of people only play Call of Duty and Madden, and it's their only two games. So it's
true.
if you're really good at them, good for you. That's all you play, I guess.
Well, can you explain why you did it?
Why?
Why'd you do it, Eric?
Yeah.
Why?
Why'd you do it?
I would say it had everything to do with being in the game and being a 12-year-old, just completely immersed in a game and loving the world. And if I can put an example to when I have felt that childhood loveness was just when I played Infamous, and I literally played Infamous Second Son completely 100% through twice in a row, and I loved every second of it, and that was within a week. So I think that challenges were harder to do back then in terms of beating it all the way. But at the same time, I was always looking up how to do that zero flight to finally beat that goddamn mission where you had to fly Zero's plane forever. But it's kind of the self back then. It was it's that youthness, is being in a universe, and I think that's why I loved Infamous. I loved being in the universe and loved playing it all the way through. But I wouldn't say I loved Infamous before I got that game. I'm not going to say that.
And I think
'cause
that
don't.
brings us to a really interesting point, which is back in the day, games didn't really have to rely on storytelling too much. But as we've progressed as an industry, as a culture, as an art form, we've introduced this whole new aspect to games, which is the story and the immersion, what Eric's talking about. And I think that you can go like two ways, or even combine the two ways now. You can have difficulty, you can have story, you can have difficult story. But sometimes having difficulty can get in the way of your story. Like games like Bioshock Infinite and Bioshock 1, I was a huge completionist in that. And sometimes I just kind of wanted the game to get out of the way so I could understand the story.
Yeah.
I mean, you see that kind of stuff a lot.
I think there's a little bit of that, like in terms of difficulty versus story. I think that some games kind of aren't really sure how they want to go about it, or it seems like they don't know how they want to go about it. Like when you get the game, and it's a little bit different than what you thought. You're like, oh, it'll be this kind of game, and then you get it, and you're like, oh, well, there's this story, and this part's really hard. So how do I get over that, to get to the next piece of the puzzle, so to speak?
How strong is your perseverance?
Well, I think a lot of times it's if it's a story moment, I feel like if it's part of the narrative, I feel like it shouldn't be that astronomical to get. Like at the end of a chapter, sure. But if it's like, well, okay, you get like 60% of the way through the story arc, and then there's like this insurmountable challenge. Because then a lot of people
That's so much what happens.
and then a lot of people are like, whatever, I'm not going to finish this, and that's why.
That's
I think
it.
what people
They
don't
get
understand.
discouraged quickly, like, oh, I'm just done.
Well-
I kind of get it. I've seen enough, and I want to trade it in and get something else. Like, like it happens sometimes.
And there's
Games-
definitely a market for those people too. I mean, look at games like Heavy Rain and even like Mass Effect. It's really easy to get through it, and it's like catered to people who want to watch the story. There's even different modes in Mass Effect for like
Yeah, you can
if
do
you
the
want to do
narrative.
It
this.
tells you, yeah.
Yeah.
The narrative mode is super cool. Like I messed around with it once just to kind of check it out, and it's literally like, it's almost like an interactive story. It's literally like
Is there no combat?
there's nothing. Like
That
basically,
sounds awesome.
So the
That
story,
sounds really fun.
So the story happens, and all of your choices are there. So it'll be like you run into this guy, and he's like, okay, this, or this, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna check this option, and then it jumps to the next part. So it's mostly story. There's a little bit of exploration, but yeah, the combat's kind of like an add-on. It's not really. It's so if you're not like a diehard gamer, but you're like, oh man, I heard this story and this is great. You can enjoy it without having to be like, oh man, I'm not really good at this video game thing, but I sure do enjoy sci-fi. So
Yeah, it might be a good way to get a non-gamer involved.
Especially Telltale's titles. I mean,
Telltale's titles really
Telltale, you got to
bring
give
the
props
line.
to. You got to give props to.
like the game companies are definitely realizing that there's different types of gamers out there now, and that they enjoy different types of things. And there's definitely this like story immersion gamer out there who exists who just wants that. And these games are killing at the box offices. I mean, I think we've really segued from a time in which gaming was all about competing and like being the best at it to gaming's like a real entertainment form now, where you can just kind of chillax and let it happen to you. You don't
think-
have to take an active role if you don't want to.
I think you've made a good point too about like the age of games. And I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but I remember back in the day I had an Atari, and I remember playing Atari, and there's a game called Berserk, and it's like to little kid me, I'm like, oh, it's so awesome. And now as an adult, I think back and I'm like, that game it didn't make any sense. So in the game, you're supposed to be this guy. It's very Logan's Run. So you're like this guy who's, I guess, running through this city where like all the robots have gone nuts because there's robots everywhere and they've all gone berserk.
Classic.
Well, of course.
And they're killing everybody. And
what
they're
else do
trying-
they do?
They're trying to kill you. But like, there's no. Like there's nothing. The game just starts and you're like, they're like, well, the robots are all crazy. And you're like, oh, I guess I'll just kill them all. And then once you kill them all, the game's over. And I'm like, oh, like there's nothing. There's no. Sorry, you're just like encapsulated on this little island of killing robots.
It'd be
Like,
fun to sit back and watch that as like a cinematic experience.
Yeah.
And this is how video games used to be made. This is complicated.
it's just a cutscene of me shooting a robot and then credits roll. Like that's it. There's no story.
I mean, I'll say I progressively kept going with why I kept going with that game because I got stronger every single time. That's when the game really was maxed out when you were at your very strongest. That's why I kept going. Just me.
I wanted to be the pinnacle of what you could be.
Yeah,
with
I
the
mean,
universe.
Ninja Gaiden was the same thing. I'm also really. I never got the platinum Ninja Gaiden, but Ninja Gaiden's also a game that I do that with.
You are the Danteest of the Dantes.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool how gamers have diverged and diversified throughout the years, and developers are really realizing this and splitting into all these different areas. I think that's all we're going to talk about for today. I'd like to thank our man Frank, Yup Frank, on the board. Please check us out, subscribe to our YouTube channel, GAU Studios, and thank you for watching, gamers.